Thank you for joining me, and we're going to get rolling here. Got the intro music going in, and three, two, one. There I am, folks. I am live. Welcome to today's show. I hope you guys are having a good Wednesday lunchtime. Hope it's been a good week so far. It's starting to warm up, huh? Yeah. All right. Welcome to the show. All right. Here we go. Here we go. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. And welcome to the Real Estate Connection with your host and realtor, Stephen Thayard, on KFAX 1100 out of San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose, San Martin, and Gilroy. I hope you guys are enjoying the starts, the beginnings of this beautiful springtime weather. The weather is starting to soften, but it is a little bit tricky. You wake up in the morning and it still feels like winter. It's cold outside and you want to bring that heavy jacket with you, and you've got frost on the windows and you're waiting for your car to warm up. But by 12 o'clock, you're ready to remove that jacket or take that sweater off because it is warm and sunny outside. That's right. It's that teasing season right before we hit the beginnings of summer and the beautifulness of spring that's starting to pop up as we speak. Also, it is that time of year to prep your soil for your garden. For all of my green thumbs out there, I personally this weekend pulled weeds out of my raised flower garden bed and added mulch to the top of it. I was reading an article on the internet and it said add mulch 2 weeks before you're gonna plant. So I hit timing perfectly this year and was able to put the mulch on top of my soil, and it's getting all snug in its bed and ready to go. And at the end of this month, I will be planting, actually my wife and I, my beautiful bride and I, will be planting our garden, and I'm looking forward to that. I'm praying that the Lord blesses the work of my hands and provides vegetables for my labor. Now, speaking of blessings, in today's show, I would like to bless you with information about, I wrote originally a couple of topics, but actually it's just one. As I was preparing for the show, this topic started to just evolve and get more detailed and more intricate. And I'm warning everybody right now, I am going to be on my soapbox today. I am standing on it. I am preaching from the mountaintops about this particular issue. And I think it's important that as this show not only provides education for real estate and how to buy or sell properties or invest in it, you should be made aware of potential laws that could affect you in the real estate market, especially if you're investors. If you have an investment property that you're getting ready to pass down to your children, and if you're getting ready to move and you do qualify, and I know we talked about this last week, 55 and over, I am going to be discussing a new ballot measure that is currently out for signature in the state of California that will change the California Constitution to make it available for 55 and over individuals to transfer their property tax base anywhere in the state up to 3 times. Now, I'm getting a little bit ahead of the show because we're going to get into the details, but there's more to it than just what's on the surface, and that's what I want to cover, and that's the piece that I'm going to be on my soapbox about. But before we get started, I'd like to bless you with something else. If you email me for a no obligation appointment to give you an estimate on the value of your home, or just sit down to discuss the prospect of buying a home, I have a gift for you. This is the Family Preparedness Buyer's Guide, and this is a must-have book for any family preparing for the eventual, unavoidable, and potential emergency here in the state of California, whether that be an earthquake or a power outage. This book is a must-have guide that will provide you information with chapters that include emergency shelter, fire, clothing, emergency food and cooking gear, communication and navigation, and survival weapons. Now, I will tell you, I've been a little bit spooked about the coronavirus, and so I have gone out and purchased a few N95 masks and some extra water, and it just inspired me to prep a little bit more and buy a few more supplies because at the time when it first came out, we really didn't know what it was going to do, and people are pretty protective out there in the medical community in regards to protecting themselves when people who have the infection come into a facility with quarantines. And so I thought, if by any chance it should spread, I wanted to be prepared. This book will help you for preparation for those types of instances and just general emergencies or earthquakes. And it was really helpful in regards to preparing food to bring into the house and how to prep it if you should not have electricity or gas. So like I said before, if you contact me and get in touch with me in regards to talking about getting your house on the market this spring, which the market has already taken off, I have a new listing that I'm going to bring up in today's show. And or if you want to talk about the prospect of buying a house in the springtime, I would like to give you this book as a blessing to you. It has lots of information. So now let's switch gears, and kick it into drive into the show, and let's get down to business. Now, we're going to be giving some historical background because this is not the first measure or proposition that signatures were gathered for in order to promote or change the California Constitution in regards to making it easier for people 55 and over to move their property tax base in the state of California. Last week's show, we went over what the current law is in regards to Santa Clara County and a few other counties that participate in the program. But in this show, we're going to go over the new ballot measure where petitions are out being signed and being pushed by the California Association of Realtors. Now, in 2018, they were successful in moving another ballot measure together by gathering signatures in the petition process. Right now, they're doing the same thing. The petitions have not been turned in yet. However, I do believe the deadline for that is coming up, I believe, in the first week of March. And so they're really pushing hard. So let me give you a little background history on the prior ballot initiative. The California Association of Realtors previously gathered enough signatures to get Proposition 5 on the ballot in 2018. The language of the prior initiative would have allowed anyone who was 55 and over to transfer their property tax base anywhere in the state of California without limits. That means if this would have been voted on and passed by the people of the state of California, anyone who was 55 and over could have got up, moved, and went to any county in the state and brought their property tax base with them. However, there was opposition and arguments against this particular measure. It didn't have any bumpers on it. It didn't have any limits. And so people or organizations were up in arms about it. So the argument being made at the time for the proposition was as follows. Retirement age homeowners were looking to downsize and move out of the area. However, they were limited to where they could go. They could only transfer their property tax base one time. Okay, so Marco has indicated to me that we only have a minute left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold off on what the arguments were for the proposition, which I heavily supported, by the way, in 2018 when I get back from the break. We're going to go down through the rest of these bullet points so I can show you why it was such a good idea at the time. And then we're going to expose what the arguments were against it and why I did not think those arguments held any water. So stay with me, and we're going to continue down this road because you're going to want to understand this information before you vote if this makes it onto the ballot in November. We'll be back. I got a sixth sense now about where we're at. in the show about that last minute or 30 seconds. It's kind of like this internal clock that Marco has programmed into me, which I really do appreciate, sir. Any of you guys out there that are watching the live feed, I'm on a commercial break now in studio as we're going between segments. So we have 3 more long segments and 1 short one. So I'm going to continue down this road, and I'm going to ask my lovely Mr. Producer to steal that from, who is that? Mark Levin. That's what he calls his producer, Mr. Producer. I'm going to steal that term for my Mr. Producer, Marco, and ask him if he would spin back up the music so we can get back to recording this show. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Thank you for joining me this morning on the Real Estate Connection with your realtor and host, Stephen Thayard, out of KFAX 1100, out of San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose, and for my South County people, Morgan Hill, Gilroy, and San Martin. If you cannot catch us in a very clear and concise fashion on the radio, you can always listen to us online, live on iHeartRadio. Just look for KFAX 1100, download the app to your phone, and take it wherever you go, and you don't have to worry about getting those fuzzy little breakups when you get into certain areas of the Bay Area. But I digress. We are speaking about a new California proposed property tax portability measure, which the California Association of Realtors is putting forth as we speak. There are petitions being circulated to gather enough signatures for this to move onto the November 2020 ballot. And what I was doing was giving you background and history of a prior Prop 5, which is what it was called, as I trip over my words, in 2018. And I'm going to pull the show over for a quick minute. I had a call last Saturday by a lovely woman out of San Mateo who was asking me questions, and I had promised to call her back because I was running out of the door to go to an appointment. And after we got off of our phone call, I realized that she had called me from a blocked number. So if you're listening to the show this morning, please call me back so that I can get your contact information and put you on my mailing list. I really did try to call you back and got so caught up into our conversation that I didn't realize, or I forgot that you had called me from a blocked number. So call me back so I can get your information again. So pulling the show back into gear and back on track again, I'm giving you background information on Prop 5, how it was previously written, and the fact that it was offering property tax portability anywhere in the state for anyone 55 and over as many times as they wanted anywhere in the state. And I supported it because these were the following arguments. Retirement age homeowners were looking to downsize and move out of the area. However, they were limited to where they could go and move their property tax portability. Santa Clara County, and I believe there were another 8 or 9, and I could be wrong, other counties, and I went through that in the last show. So if you missed it, you can go online and catch me on Podbean, and I'll be putting a link out. So you could only transfer your property tax base one time. Therefore, if people of this age category moved and did not like the area that they had moved to, they were stuck. Right? You could move again, but you couldn't transfer your property tax base. So you had to be really careful about where you were going. And even with the best research, right, you don't really know until you get to a new location and start living there to truly understand what it's like to live in the area you've moved to. Also, most retirement-aged individuals were looking to move to slower-paced areas. We're talking about people who are successful maybe in the Bay Area or in LA, and they're looking to get out of the hustle and bustle and the traffic of these high dense areas where they were making their living and moving out to slower paced areas, maybe out to the valley or into the hills or maybe up into the mountains, right? And so you are going to take your property tax base from a high dense area and move it into a slower paced area. This would free up housing stock, which is what we call, or inventory, in high-paced, job-rich environments and high cost of living areas such as the Silicon Valley or LA, right? Now, what were the benefits of this happening? This would allow the county to reassess the value of the house being sold to a younger family to current fair market value rates or standards or pricing, right? So, quick example, if you've been in your house since the mid 80s and now you're looking to retire and move out of LA or move out of the Valley, Silicon Valley, and you may have purchased it back then at, $400,000, 5-bedroom, 3 baths. It's a family house. Your kids are grown, they've moved out, and Prop 13 has kept your tax base low. So now you want to move out of this high-paced area and move into a slower-paced area, maybe down the coast to San Luis Obispo County, or maybe out into Tuolumne or in the mountains, or maybe even out to Bakersfield. Who knows? Wherever you want to go, right? You would then sell your house to a young family who's looking to put roots into a neighborhood and grow, and sell it at the new fair market value of today's standards of anywhere between $1 million, $1.5 million, right? And then the county is going to reassess from that $400,000 level to $1.5 million, and cha-ching, the county's making all this money, right? Because they're turning over inventory where people are holding onto their houses and aging in place and not leaving, and upping their property tax rolls and their property tax bases and making more money. So this, of course, would bring more value to the county where the people were moving out of. Now, for the counties where these people, retirement age people, were moving into, right, they're not only bringing their tax base with them, but they're bringing their retirement dollars. So it's unlike where they're living in a place where they're commuting maybe out of their city. Like for me, Morgan Hill's a nice bedroom community where a lot of people live, but they don't necessarily work there. They'll drive out of town 5 days a week and go have lunch or lease office space up in San Jose where they're doing business. And so the tax dollars are leaving Morgan Hill and going to San Jose to be spent out of town. But when you're retired and you move to someplace like San Luis Obispo County, you're going to be staying in place. You're not working, or you may take a part-time job, but you're spending your retirement dollars, sales taxes, other infrastructure type of taxes that could be collected on spending in the new county that they moved into, because it's a lower cost of living and they're dropping their dollars locally, which would then increase the sales taxes of that community. So it seemed to me that this was an absolutely fantastic win-win situation. However, the tax collectors in various counties and labor groups associated with the teachers associations, fire, and police were arguing against the proposition. Now, my premise was it was good for the people, and so anything that was good for the people gets shot down. And I don't know why that spirit exists in our state, but for some reason it does. So the argument that was coming from the teachers associations, fire, and police was that they were saying there would be a loss of revenue for the counties for the following 2 reasons. Now, I listed out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 reasons why it was a good idea, and I only came up with 2 reasons on the opposition. But the opposition has money. So remember that, folks. The opposition has money. The labor unions have money. The teachers associations have money. Fire and police unions have a lot of money. They have a lot of money in their coffers, and that money is ammunition, and that's ammunition to fight and spend dollars on ads and all kinds of media to come against this. So what was their argument? They were saying that people from low cost of living locations would move into counties with high home values and bring their low property tax base with them, thus causing local jurisdictions to lose property tax dollars and county services. Now, logically speaking, this makes no sense, because anyone 55 and over is not going to move out of a slower paced area and move into a higher cost of living area. It's just not going to happen. Right? People are looking to retire and have a slower pace of life and stop and smell the roses and enjoy their life where there's not so much stress, or there's not so much traffic, and there's not so much hustle and bustle, right? And the office in the state of California who did a calculation on this came out with numbers that didn't make any sense. So it just was nuts. But they were fully opposed, and they spent money against us. So what this argument did not address, okay, that I just mentioned, is that retired individuals would be spending time. I already mentioned it. I'm going back to my notes because I want to make sure that I cover everything. So, yes, I need to behave myself, says Marco. So I'm trying to go back to my notes to make sure I covered everything, but I already did. So it didn't address these arguments. Now, Marco says I have 2 minutes. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a break, and I'm going to come back in the next segment, and I'm going to talk about this new measure that the California Association of Realtors is proposing and is now saying that can be passed. Now, I believe it can be passed, but I don't believe why it can be passed is good. I don't think it's good for the people. And I've already spilled the beans. I know, I'm on my soapbox. I learned from watching and listening to other talk show hosts and radio programs, and they always hold back to keep people on the hook about their own opinion to the very end. But I just dumped it on you. So stick with me so when we come back from the break, you can understand why I think the way I think about this newly proposed measure and why on its surface it seems like a good idea, but underneath it, not so much. So I'll see you when we get back from paying some bills. All right, I'm on fire. I am on fire. That's right, the real estate educator. I'm out here to show you guys the way. So, arguments. All right, houses being sold either in Jersey. Okay, all right. So, we're gonna get this thing going again, and I'm gonna get on my soapbox. But get a pencil and paper ready, because there's details. We're gonna go through some calculations that are ridiculous. But anyway, I digress. We're gonna get going again. Mr. Producer, would you spin up our intro music, please? Marco's on fire today! That's right. Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm glad you stayed with me even though I already spilt the beans. All right, so we were discussing the prior Prop 5 initiative that was on the ballot in 2018, which did not pass. Labor spent money against us. Who else? Unions, teachers, fire, police. The unions have money, more money than the California Association of Realtors. Even though we're a big lobby group, we didn't have the money to fight it, and so we got defeated. And we couldn't get the word out to everybody to tell them how great this was, because it was going to be fantastic. I mean, this was going to be constitutional law change in the state of California, and you guys could have been able to move your property tax base anywhere in the state as many times as you wanted, right? This was going to be absolutely phenomenal, fantastic, but we were defeated. So now the California Association of Realtors has come back from the drawing board and put forth a new proposed proposition for 55 and overs to move their property tax to any location within California. Now that sounds good, right? However, it comes with a limit on how many times you can move your tax base. You can only do this now 3 times with this new proposed measure. The other measure was better. I was fully behind this, supported the other measure 150,000%. Okay? I was behind it, telling all my clients, go vote for this thing. It was going to be ridiculously good. So, now, this new measure that is out for signature changes it just a little bit. And I think takes away some benefits that we currently have in the state based on me reading it. So I'm not making this stuff up. I'm reading it and now I'm sharing it with you. So let's get into it. There's a limit on how many times you can move it, which is 3 times. But buried in here is a property tax increase. Okay? There's a property tax increase. So let's get into the details. The proposition, if put on the ballot, which I think it's going to make it, they're going to be able to get the signatures, and if passed by the voters, would do the following. 1, allow 55 and over to transfer their property tax base for a primary residence anywhere in the state 3 times. This would also be expanded to the severely disabled, victims of natural disasters or hazardous waste contamination. So let's say the last fire that took place in Paradise, it would be expanded to people who were not 55 and over, who are victims of natural disasters or hazardous waste contamination. Also, the proposition would allow a parent or grandparent to transfer the property tax base to a child or grandchild if the parent or grandparent sells or transfers the property to a child or grandchild only if they move into the property as a primary residence. That's the first gotcha in this proposal. Right now, currently, a parent can transfer a property to their child without an increase in the property tax base. It transfers over with the child whether or not they move into the property or not. You get that? Right now, you can transfer over from a parent to a child the property, whether it's a sale or a transfer, and you get the same property tax base your parents have, whether you move into the property or not. This new measure changes that to say that you only get it if you move into the residence. Now, the language that's in this proposal, I'm going to read it to you, right? I've got it right in front of me. I don't like it. I don't like it because it pits people against each other. It pits the rich against the poor, and I don't believe it's 100% on, well, let's just say I think it's missing some things, okay? So here on the petition itself, it says, however, loopholes in the system are being exploited, frequently by out-of-state residents and trust fund heirs, a la rich people, to unfairly avoid paying current fair market taxes on vacation homes, luxury estates, beachfront rentals, and income-producing properties. Now, what if your family's business has been investing in real estate? What if that's what you do? And you've worked really, really hard to build up a nice investment portfolio, and you want to pass it down to your children to continue running this business for you. With this new law, if the kids don't move into the house as a primary residence, the property tax gets adjusted from what the parents purchased it at to current fair market value. What's that going to do? That's either going to force the kids to sell the property because they can't afford the property taxes, or they're going to have to raise the rents. Well, guess what? You can't raise the rent anymore because there's rent control that just passed in the state of California. So what's that going to do? It's going to kill family businesses. Also, you could be living in the state. What if your parents live in LA and you live up here in the Bay Area and they have a primary residence, but you don't want to sell it, you want to keep it in the family, so you want to rent it out. Now, you don't have the ability to keep that property tax base that your parents have and then rent it as an income-producing property. What if your parents' plans were to leave that to you to create wealth so that the family over generations could continue to build wealth in the state of California? This new proposition that's being out there for signature would take that away. I don't agree with that. Also, when in the United States of America did it become a sin to be successful and to grow wealth? We're supposed to be the greatest nation in the world where you can come in at any level and have an opportunity to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, work hard, and become wealthy if possible. You know, when I was a little kid going to school, it was the American dream. You go to school, you get an education, you work really hard, maybe start a business, but there was always this thing out there that said you could get rich in the United States. You could become well off. You could make something of yourself. You don't have to if you don't want to. No one's going to force it down your throat. But there's that opportunity. And people looked at that as a good thing. And over time, it's slowly but surely been attacked and attacked and attacked and demonized by people to say that it's no longer good to be wealthy. Now, there are some people out there who have money who have done some dastardly things. I am not denying that. However, that does not make all people who have earned and worked hard to get to a certain position in life bad. Okay, so I'm sorry. I got off topic and jumped on my soapbox, but I just don't like it. All right? Now, this also kicks in through involuntary transfers, either through court orders or judicial decrees. So if there's a court ordered transfer from a parent to a child, this law is in effect. So it's not voluntary. It's not only just voluntary, it's court ordered. So this is, now that's a lot, right? But now we're going to delve into the trickiness of this whole proposition and the calculations that are under it. And Marco says, I have a minute left? 2 minutes? A minute and 15 seconds. So I can't really get into it. But the proposition says that you can keep the property tax base of your parents if the child or grandchild moves into the property. Well, that's not exactly 100% accurate either, because there's a calculation that you have to go through to determine whether or not additional value will be added to that property for property tax purposes or not, even if you move into it. And it's in the language, and it's super hard to understand. I had to read it like 20 times and write it down before I finally got it. And I don't like that either. I don't like when you write things in laws for people to sign that an average person can't read and know what it's talking about immediately. That's deception to me. And I know I'm treading on thin water. I get it. Let's not call it deception. Let's call it something softer and gentler. Let's call it hard to understand. I don't believe anyone's deceiving anyone on purpose. It's just probably written in a formula way that's just hard for me to understand. So let's put it that way. So when we get back from the break, I'm going to roll through these formulas so you guys can get a better feel for what's happening in this legislation. And I'll be back when I get back from the break. All right. We will start this show again. Oh, my Lord. Hey, when you air this, can you take out that deception part? Yeah. Just to protect myself from lawsuits. I don't want to get in trouble. Oh, my goodness. All right. Anyway. Okay. So we're going to keep rolling. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back to the show. So, as I was saying before, there are some things in this that I don't like, and in regards to this new measure that we've been discussing. So, in case you're just joining us, you're on KFAX 1100, and this is the Real Estate Connection with Realtor Stephen Thayard. I am speaking about a new measure that's being put out there by the California Association of Realtors to allow people 55 and over to move their property tax base in the state of California 3 times. And it's also going to be expanded to people who are victims of natural disasters, the severely disabled, and people that are suffering from hazardous waste contamination on their property. However, there are changes to current laws that are also attached to this proposition that says that if a parent transfers a house to a child or a grandparent to a grandchild, that you will not get the property tax base if you do not move into the house as a primary residence. And I was also speaking to the fact that I do not like that change because the premise is that it's out-of-state people taking advantage, or rich people taking advantage, or heirs or trust fund babies taking advantage. To me, it doesn't take into account that there are people who have built businesses based on rental properties, and that oftentimes, as part of estate planning, there are people in the state of California who build wealth through the acquisition of property, and they want to transfer this wealth to their heirs, meaning their children. With that being said, if the child is living in San Francisco or San Jose or Northern California and the parents are in Los Angeles or in Southern California and they pass, the child may not want to move down into Southern California, or it may be that the parent has purposely kept the house on purpose so that the wealth of the child could be built and the child could then hold that property and rent it. Now, if the parent has purchased the house, in the 80s at $400,000 and it's now reassessed at $1.5 million, the child would then have to pay property taxes on this house and try to keep it, which they probably wouldn't, which would force it to be sold, which would then take this income-producing piece of property or wealth piece of portfolio out of the investment plan that the family was working on together. So, but again, that's not all that's in here. The proposition says if you move in to the parent's home and live in it, that you get the base. But that's not exactly 100% accurate, because there is a formula within this proposition that you have to go through in order for you to see whether or not the tax base will be adjusted up or down. So here's my interpretation of how the formula works. I have not seen anyone else try to do this. I did my level-headed best based on reading the language in the proposition to give you guys an example that I'm going to walk through right now. The issue is it's confusing. It was confusing to me, and it's going to be confusing to you as I read it. So here we go. So the property, once the child receives it in the transfer, has to go through a reassessment formula, okay? And this is how the formula works. So if the sale is complete, meaning the child gets the property and it's complete on, we're going to use for this example, July 3rd, the property is reassessed for formula purposes only the day before, July 2nd. So what would happen is there would be a current fair market assessed value calculated on the property the child has received as of the day before the transaction is completed. So that would be July 2nd if they completed the transaction on July 3rd. So for our example, let's say the property is reassessed for formulary purposes only on July 2nd at $1 million, which is not hard to do in San Jose, okay? So the child inherits the property or gets the property transferred on July 3rd. For formula purposes only, it's reassessed and given a value of $1 million. Then the formula asks for the following calculation. You're going to add the base year value of the property being purchased to $1 million. So for our example, we're going to say that the parents, when they purchased the house, they bought it at $500,000. That's the base year value. You're then going to add that base year value to $1 million. And that's going to total up to $1,500,000. Now the new law goes on to say that if this calculation is less than the reassessed value at July 2nd, the day before the transfer was complete, you add $0 to the base year. Okay? So, at $1 million value, it's less than the $500,000 plus the million, or $1,500,000. So then you would add $0 to the base year, right? Confusing, right? Totally confusing. Completely, utterly, and ridiculously confusing. I had to read this thing like 10 times and write it down and create examples in my head for me to even understand what this is talking about. So I'm guessing that the layman who picks up this proposition to read it is not going to have any clue what's going on. Okay, right? Nuts. Absolutely nuts. So then, if you do move into the house and you go through this calculation and you pass this test, and your reassessed value for formulary purposes only is less than the total of the base year plus the $1 million range, $1 million, then you add $0 to the base year, which means the child gets to keep the property tax base of $500,000. However, it goes on to further a further example, and there's more. Here's the second example. All right, this is how your base year could potentially go up, even though you've moved in and you're the child. So the property is reassessed for formula purposes only as of the day before the transfer is complete. So we go back to our original example. The child completes the transfer on July 3rd, and the property is reassessed for formula purposes only on July 2nd. So for our second example, we're going to say that that reassessed value is $2 million instead of $1 million, okay? So it's $2 million, which is not hard to do in, say, like a town or in Los Gatos or Menlo Park or even San Francisco. Then the formula asks for the following calculation. Add the base year value of the property being purchased plus $1 million. So for our example, let's use the same base year of $500,000. The parents purchased the house for $5,000 as the base year value of the property being transferred from the parent to the child. So the total of the base year, $500,000 plus $1 million is now $1,500,000. Same number as we used in the last example. However, now the new law goes on to say, if the reassessed value of the property for calculation purposes only on July 2nd, in our example, is equal to or higher than the base year plus $1 million, you do the following. You take the $2 million reassessed for calculation purposes on July 2nd, in our example, and you subtract the total of the base year from it. So, for our example, you take the $2 million minus the $1,500,000, which is the $1 million plus the base year. Then you get a difference of $500,000. You now add this $500,000 to your base year, and that is your new reassessed value. So for our example, that would be $500,000 base year plus the $500,000 number from the formula to total $1 million as the new property tax base. So this is even if you move into the property as a primary residence. So even though on the surface it seems to indicate that if you transfer the property from a parent to a child, that you're going to get the parent's base year if you move into the property, you still have to go through this formula process. And depending on how you get spit out on the other side, you can either keep the base year or there may be an adjustment upwards on the base year. So, based on all that, I kind of don't like this new proposition. Marco says I have 30 seconds, so I'm going to wrap this. At this point, I personally don't support it. And when we get back, I'm going to wrap up the show and give you my thoughts behind it. I don't think the trade-off is worth it. So we'll see you when we get done paying some bills. Right on. A lot of people saying hi to me today. I'm saying hi back. Welcome to the show, everybody. Thanks for joining me. So anyway, we're gonna wrap the show, and I just want to say thank you guys for your support, and I appreciate it. Okay, here we go. Hey everybody, welcome back. Welcome back to the show. Thanks for joining me as we're wrapping up this edition of the new California proposed property tax portability measure. I've read through half of it, so there's more to it. There also is some property tax adjustment upwards for transfers having to do with corporations that I didn't have a chance to read. Based on some conversation with friends, it seems to affect farmers and their ability to transfer their land and their businesses without a property tax increase. And so I'm on the side of the farmers. They do a great service to our nation. They're our food supply. And we have a lot of farmers in the state of California. And it's just, to me, the trade-off for getting to move your property tax base, if you're 55 and over, 3 times anywhere in the state, doesn't equal out the adjustments in property tax base for if you're trying to transfer property you've worked really hard for, either in your generation or your parents' generation or your grandparents' generation, to have to take a hit in receiving that property based on this new law. The American dream is that everybody, hopefully in this nation, has the opportunity to work hard and with the help and support of God and family and friends to make a good life for themselves. And if you've worked super hard to get an investment property for your family and then want to pass it on to your children, I don't think they should have to pay for the exchange of people moving their tax base in order to trade that off. That's just my personal opinion. Others think differently, and I've had this conversation with other people, and they view that it's worth the trade-off. And that they view it from a different light. And everybody in the United States, because of our First Amendment, has the ability to express themselves, and that's what makes our country absolutely fantastic. So it is what it is. It's out there, but I wanted to make sure that you guys knew what it was and read it. Don't take my word for it. Pick it up and read it for yourself. If you see a petition out there, ask if you can make a copy of it and take it home and read it for yourself and decide for yourself. This is just my personal viewpoint. And before I go, today's show, I have a new listing I wanted to talk about. I have a client that called me up after 11 years of living in their house in Morgan Hill. In a very nice neighborhood. They were really smart, and they purchased the least expensive house in the most expensive neighborhood, and they have rode up the equity train, and now they are moving on to their dream house. And so that is listed for sale, 18645 Purisima Way in Morgan Hill. Let me just make sure I have that address. 18645 Purisima Way in Morgan Hill. It's 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, 2,238 square feet in the Alicante home development, one of the most sought-after developments in Morgan Hill, on the northeast quadrant, facing the foothills and Anderson Dam. It's got a beautiful view from the master bedroom with a full bedroom and bath on the ground floor. Absolutely fantastic property, well maintained, and attractively priced at $1,235,000. So if you're at all interested in that property at all, feel free to reach out to me through social media. and I would be happy to help you out, or you can call me directly at 408-472-0817. Thank you for joining me on today's show. I know it was a lot, but I wanted to really get it out there and make sure that you read your propositions before you sign them, and read them before you vote on them. All right, thank you. God bless you. God bless the state of California. God bless your families. And I appreciate you joining me today on today's show. I will see you next week, and get out there and plant that garden. All right, we'll see you later. Bye-bye. Well, folks, there's another one in the books. So, thank you. Like I said before, I don't think they're deceiving anybody. I just think that the language isn't necessarily easy to understand. And unless you have the time to sit down and really go through the language, it's hard to know what's really packed in here. And I wanted to make sure that you guys saw what I saw. All right, that's it, everyone. Thank you for joining me. We will see you next time. Have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.